everyone. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to be discussing the expiring contracts in the next couple of years or few years or so at Tottenham Hotspur. You have the list here via Lily White Rose. In 2026, you could see the expiration of Sonny's contract, Bentancur's, Bissouma's, Davies, Brian Hill's, and Matthew Craig's. And then in 2027, Romero's is due to expire, Richarlison's, Mikey Moore's, Alfie Devine's, Dane Scarlett's, Josh Keeley's, and George Abbott. Dave, some of these are very, very important that we have to discuss about 2026. Let's get it started off with Son Heung-Min. You and I have alluded to in one of the shorts and TikToks that we uploaded that there is actually a chance Spurs might be looking to sell him this summer because they only extended it by a year. We know he's getting on a bit in age. I'm not sure how you feel about whether you would actually want to let him go or sell him. So where are you at with Sonny? What do you expect to happen? And what would you like to happen?
Look, I said it way back, when they were teeting around offering him a contract. And when they did, they only offered him the contract extension when it comes to Son. I sort of said back then, this could be the last few months of Sonny. I think Tottenham will look to cash in this summer. Then you see the reports to the Saudi Pro League. Look, whether he goes there or not, I'm not quite so sure, but the reports are there linking him. And then also, recently there were reports suggesting that the vibes from inside the club is that Sonny's speaking in a term that maybe, or giving off the impression that he wants to leave this summer, or that he's leaving this summer. So for me,
end on a high, I guess, in his case, right?
End on a high, but I would hazard a guess the club will not do it until they finish the preseason tour out in South Korea.
I don't personally. I feel like I'd give him sort of a Mark Noble kind of status at the club. Like if he's comfortable with maybe not starting every single game, you sort of manage his minutes a bit better, pick and choose which fixtures are better for him to play in. Bring in some competition for him, right? It'd be great. I know Brian Mbeumo is headed to the likes of Manchester United, but someone of that type of caliber, someone that can pick up from Sonny, sort of take on, the chalice, take on the responsibility that he once had. I think we have to do that. It's one of my priority signings is to bring someone that can replace Sonny in the future. But then he'd still be a great player to keep around, in my opinion. We know the quality that he can bring on his day. But yeah, it does look like, Spurs could be looking to sell him this summer. I know some people were disregarding it entirely, but in the video that we put out, I don't think there's really too much of a chance of him staying on for that much longer by the looks of things.
If they had no intentions of selling him, why didn't they wrap up this contract situation when they had the opportunity? Why have they put themselves in this situation again? You also got to take into account Thomas Frank might go, do you know what? Get rid of Son. I want to go my own direction with the forward line.
Free up some wages.
Like that. So exactly, free up wages. People got to remember, Son is 32. He's going to be 33 before the campaign even kicks off. He's already on 200 grand a week, the highest paid player at the club. He's going to want more than that. And I don't think Tottenham are going to give him that, judging on the output that we're going to receive from a guy that's another year older. We already seen the effect of the age taking its toll on him. What I will say in Son's defense, 11 goals, 12 assists, still isn't bad output for a struggling Tottenham team.
Yeah.
But I would hazard a guess, now's probably the right time. He's delivered a trophy to the fans. We can still get 30 to 50 million for him and reinvest it.
Bentancur, Dave and I can probably take this one quickly. It looks like by rumors that he's actually willing and wanting to stay on at Tottenham Hotspur and is kind of being lined up for some type of leadership role by the looks of things from the hierarchy. I think Bentancur has aspirations, has dreams of being a future captain actually of the club. I think he would be a very worthwhile player to keep around. Lots of experience. We don't really have a ton of experience in the midfield. Most of them are actually quite young, up and coming. Bentancur, I think on his day, we call him Mercedes Benton class for a reason. I think he's absolutely worth keeping around, right, Dave?
Yeah, for sure. Not much to discuss there. I think you look at our midfield now, he's our best midfielder. You would argue midfield needs an overhaul, but until you do that, he's our best midfielder. You got to keep him tied down.
And then this guy is almost probably worth a video on his own, but we'll try to maybe give our quick opinions on it. Bissouma, Dave. I mean, he finished the season so strongly, but he's a guy for me that just is up and down, cold and hot, just someone that I don't necessarily trust, can be relied upon game in, game out. I think he'll have his bad weeks and he'll have his good weeks. Bissouma, would you be willing to sell him this summer?
He'll be gone. I listened to Thomas Frank on the High Performance podcast, Jack, and he speaks about no egos, no dickheads. Basically, people that want to, all achieve a common goal. And with that, it takes great sacrifice. He won't have Bissouma out partying. He won't have him on balloons. And he won't have some of the shit that we have to put up with Bissouma. At the end of the day, Thomas Frank's system requires great sacrifice and discipline. Well, that's not what Bissouma gives you. So for that tells me it's time to cash in.
Ben Davis, we know, was just given a new contract, so not really much to discuss there. Bryan Hill, I'd expect would be sold this summer. I don't think he has any future at Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think he wants to have any future at Tottenham Hotspur. Matthew Craig, someone who was talented coming through the academy, I think would also be expected to be sold on this summer to whichever maybe League One or Championship club would probably be willing to bring him in. But Dave, you do have a better insight on some of the younger players than I do. Do you expect Matthew Craig to leave?
Yeah, I do. Look, when it comes to Craig, he's had a couple of good loan spells, but they're nowhere near the level of the Donnellys or the Abbott loan spells. And I think he's never going to make it at Tottenham. I think it is time to cash in on Craig.
And then 2027, now we move on to some very important players. Crsitian Romero, with the departure of Ange Postecoglou again, almost like Bissouma, maybe worth a video of its own. I think Crsitian Romero could be out the door this summer, if not the next summer, because we did hear rumors from various ITKs that he wanted Ange Postecoglou to stick around. And if Ange Postecoglou didn't stick around, he would be signaling to Spurs that he would like to go. Am I right by saying that, Dave? Do you believe those rumors
Yeah.
from the ITKs?
Yeah, I sort of do. Look, I sort of do believe them rumors, to be honest with you, Jack. Look, I liken Romero to the Harry Kane situation, right? With
Yeah.
Harry Kane, when it first came around, because of his love for the football club and, basically we gave him his whole career and stuff like that, he stuck around the first time. But, when they got rid of Nuno, brought in Conte, said, okay. Then they get rid of Conte to bring in Postecoglou. He looks at that name and he goes, not going to win here, I'm out. I think Romero's also looking at that name and going, okay, I've just won a Europa League trophy. If I do stay, I want to see that we're going to go on and compete and lift up the likes of the Premier League and other trophies. And I want club captaincy. And I think he looks at the likes of Thomas Frank and goes, no. And I think 2 years left on his contract. We've already seen him in the media generally sort of try and push that move already, which irked a lot of fans. It does look like he's on his way out. I don't think Tottenham are in a rush to sell. At the end of the day, this could go on all summer. They will want to get the highest price possible. He's 2 years left on his deal. But I'd urge Spurs fans, don't cave on this one. The unanimous message needs to be, we need to keep our best players. You're already seeing it. Romero could be on his way out the door. They're looking at bringing in Nathan Collins. I mean,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
geez.
I'm sorry, but there's levels to this game here. And I just, if we want to really kick on, quality of players matters under whatever manager it is, and it is Thomas Frank. The quality of player matters even more. You got to try and keep Romero. Don't bend on it and send the message that we want this guy signed down at all costs.
Yeah, I think echo everything
You
Dave
wouldn't have won
said.
the Europa League final without him. If we didn't have him in that back line doing what he done to Harry Maguire and everybody else, we wouldn't have won.
I think Romero is one of the best center backs in the world. I've called him the reincarnation of Sergio Ramos. I see no reason to try to sell him, but Romero, he might want to leave now that he's not gotten what he wanted in terms of the manager sticking around. And it's been rumored for a while now that he might be out the door. I expect that he could be sold this summer, if not the next one. Richarlison, Dave and I are fans of his. We like him. We vouched for him. We backed him before. My issue is when we've said this, both you and I have said this, as much as we back him, as much as we like him and think he's a very useful player, how often is he actually fit and available, right? And will this just continue to be something that happens in his career where he'll have, good weeks, that he comes in and, is fit and firing and, helping the team out. And then all of a sudden picks up a knock and is out for a month or two, right? So I wonder, is that going to be a constant in Richarlison's career? And should we just cash in now and just bring in someone that can offer something similar, but can be more consistently available? I'll just quickly add, I wonder if Thomas Frank is a guy that could see some use in a guy like Richarlison. Thomas Frank, he likes big balls into the box, big crosses in. He likes having that sort of aerial presence in the penalty area, a fox in the box, if you will. Richarlison is a version of that. But Dave, your thoughts on Richarlison? Will he stick around? Do you want him to stick around?
Look, my thoughts were the exact same as you. That's why I started sniggering with Richarlison, because I just think, this is a guy that Thomas Frank will look at and go, I can use. He likes players that will put their body on the line and sacrifice. Richarlison does that when he's available, and he likes to put balls in the box and get people in that box that can get on the end of them. Richarlison probably has that ability more than any other player in that forward line. One thing I've always liked about Richarlison, you put the ball in the box, he will sniff out an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think Thomas Frank will like that. However, I do think it genuinely comes down to how much Tottenham can recoup. If there's an offer for 20, 25 million, I think Tottenham turn that down all day long. If there's an offer of 40 or above on the table, I think they accept it. And I think that's literally what it comes down to. I think he's definitely in the market, but it comes down to what other clubs are willing to pay.
They definitely won't. They'll go for at least half of what they had to pay for
Yeah.
him, from the likes of Everton. If Everton maybe somehow negotiate a deal to bring him back, I wonder if Spurs would actually listen. Mikey Moore, you'd really hope that Spurs, are going to give him some more opportunities this coming year, and he'll sign on a new contract, I guess.
Well, I hope so, Jack. One of the biggest things aimed at Postecoglou was he didn't give more enough opportunities or develop more enough,
Yeah,
and I would hope, that Thomas Frank, one thing we're told about, he's an expert coach, develops players and everything else. Well, he's got one of the best, youth products around world football. Let's see how good he is. Let's see if he can develop this guy and kick Mikey Moore on. But when you have the likes of Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund, and all chasing his signature a number of times, we've got to tie him down. Have to.
yeah. Now, without the divine, it's just a funny case with him. We can see the talent, we can see there's a player there, but during his various loan spells, he hasn't necessarily totally dominated. Apart from that time that he had at Port Vale, I remember, he was doing very
Mm,
well there. But when he went to the likes of Portsmouth,
Plymouth.
he or Plymouth, sorry, he didn't really kick on. Then again, that club is always kind of a bit up and down in terms of their decision making. They had Wayne Rooney as manager at one point, right? So a bit hard for Alfie Devine, I think. Um, I don't know. I think he'll probably be sold maybe at some point unless he impresses Thomas Frank over the summer and maybe he does really well on his next
Mm.
loan spell and then maybe they look to bring him back. But I think he could be out the door sometime soon.
Yeah, and I think it's sad, for Alfie Devine to a large degree, Jack, because when we signed him from Wigan that time, he came here with a huge reputation. Um, he was the club's youngest goal scorer, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
as
he was
well.
like 16, 17 when we got him
For a
in.
period of time, and he sort of has that huge reputation. But you are right. Within the loan spells that we've given him, and even the pre-seasons that he's played for Tottenham, he hasn't really kicked on. He hasn't really, even in the pre-seasons on Tottenham, you look at how Mikey Moore was pre-season last season for Tottenham, on the ball, running at players, making stuff happen. I've never really seen that from Alfie
No.
Devine, really grabbing the ball or the bull by its horns and sort of taking care of his own career. And I just wonder, is it time to cash in? Because he's not really kicked on, and I'm not sure he's shown enough of a level to really kick on, currently past what we've already got. And that's already a low enough standard. So for me, I think it could be time to cash in, Jacko.
Something similar could be said about Dane Scarlett, right,
Yeah.
Dave? Even though he did do well in that game for the Europa League, was a savior for us, and probably was a little bit hard done by at times by not giving more opportunities by Ange Postecoglou. He's a guy that hasn't done very well in his loan spells, and then when maybe he has had an opportunity to impress a Tottenham manager, just hasn't really broken into the team.
Do you know, I'd argue, though, there was a couple of games this year. I think Ipswich, he came off the bench, set up Kulusevski for a goal, didn't he?
Yeah.
In the Europa League, he came off the bench and scored a much-needed goal against Elfsborg, when we were maybe starting to worry a little bit because we really needed to win that game. So, with Scarlett, it's a bit difficult. Look, to your point, the loan spells haven't gone as well as they should have. This is a player that bag goals for the underage teams every single year. Huge reputation in the England underage teams, scoring goals. But he has found it difficult taking that next step. But I would argue, even looking at him this year, he sort of bulked up a little bit and stuff. I would hold off on this one. I think this might be one that the club and
Maybe
Thomas
one last
Frank
chance. Yeah.
might actually keep around, and I think you might actually see him registered in the European squad as a
Yeah.
homegrown player.
Yeah.
One club trained player. I just think I would hold off on this one. I think
He's good in the
he
air.
might just be kept around.
He's good in the air. You wonder if Thomas Frank might get the most out of him. Josh Keeley, I think he's very talented, shown that he's a very good goalkeeper, during his time in Leyton Orient. It's just whether Josh Keeley backs himself to eventually get some minutes at Tottenham Hotspur, or if he just feels like, you know what, sell me, give me a chance, away from the club, and, I'll prove you guys wrong. I mean, because the fact that they brought in Kinski, that's the big sort of question mark, right? Who's going to stick around longer, the likes of Josh Keeley or Kinski?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think this is a bit of a weird situation because, the information that I was sort of passed on to me, was that by all intentions, that it looked like Keely was going to look for a move out and look to become number one somewhere, and that he was dissatisfied with us signing the likes of Kinski and that, he's further down the pecking order. But I think if you're Tottenham, you've got to look at this. You paid pittance for him from the League of Ireland. He's gone out to Leyton Orient as number one, and he's been absolutely outstanding. You know, he's garnered a good reputation in the game now as one of the hottest young prospects in terms of goalkeeper. He's a good shot stopper, good with the ball at his feet in terms of a modern day goalkeeper. Now, I've always said around Ireland, he's very highly rated, even at his young age he was. And I just think, you know, with Tottenham, they'll probably want to extend, give him a new contract and get him to sign on the dotted line. I reckon that's what they will do with Josh Keeley, because they will look at it and go, look, Josh, time is on your side. But I also think if you're Josh Keeley, you're looking at the Ireland pecking order, Bissouma, Kelleher, keepers like that. You're looking at the Tottenham pecking order. He's got a huge decision to make. He, at some point earlier on, has to get out and become number one somewhere.
Yeah.
And earn his stripes for the sake of his career. So I think this is one to watch. I think it could be that Tottenham might want him to sign, but I think Keeley might look at it and go, Brandon Austin, Vicario, and fucking Luca Gunter around as well, along with Kinski. It's a long pathway to Tottenham, and he might just go, I want out. So it's an interesting one. We'll wait and see.
Another interesting one, maybe to finish off on, is George Abbott. Did brilliantly at Notts County, if not one of their best players of the season. You just wonder if it's just kind of a wait and see here. You know, can he impress Thomas Frank in the preseason? Can he maybe go out on loan one more time just to show that he can do it 2 times over, right? Have another brilliant loan spell, maybe someplace else. But yeah, I think George Abbott, definitely not, you know, down and out for the count. Maybe there is a chance that he actually does have a future in this Tottenham Hotspur midfield at some point. You know, took his loan at Notts County so well. I just wonder if they'll give him another opportunity to develop away from the club, then look to bring him back. But that's only my guess. That's only my speculation. And again, Dave usually knows a bit better on this type of stuff.
Yeah, look, when it comes to Abbott, Jack, you're absolutely spot on. He's had a phenomenal year at Notts County. Absolutely phenomenal season. We all would have seen some of the highlight reels of some of his goals and assists coming out of there. And look, I think if I remember correctly, wasn't he one of the ones that Conte gave his debut to? Or was it Stellini, one of them? You know, and he was captain of the under-21 side as well, which I think surprised many, you know, given some of the other players that they had there, like your Darringtons and your Donnellys and people like that. And look, it's one that I think the club will certainly sign him on the dotted line and continue sending him out on loan, and hopefully he keeps developing at the rate he is.
There you go, everybody. Those are our opinions on the expiring contracts. Of course, there were ones in 2028, but I think that will be due for another time to perhaps talk about. Appreciate you all. Thanks to Lily White Rose as well for even, you know, giving us that graphic to be able to work off of. And we'll see you all for the next video.
Stop ghosting me on Twitter, by the way, John. I've dropped you a message. I know you've seen it.
And also do smash a like button in case you wanted something else apart from the Thomas Frank content, which will dominate the next weeks or so. So just something as a little bit of a palate cleanser for you all. And also thank you again to all of our members for supporting this channel. Please do follow us over on the socials, the IrishHotspur on Instagram, the Twitter, as well as TikTok if you want to see any other kind of short form content for you guys. But we will see you all next time. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Keep Mikey Moore, please.